Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and get started. You know, in spite of the tragic events of Orlando this weekend, we still have a good news story today. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today, and especially the following for their presence and unwavering support of this important coastal storm damage reduction project. Senator Schumer, Representatives Jeffries and Nadler, our partners and non-federal sponsor, New York State DEC, New York City officials, the Seagate Association, and H&L Construction, a local contractor that worked on this job. Hard work, dedication, and coordination were the keys to getting this project completed on time. About 3.5 years ago, Superstorm Sandy's impacts were mitigated by a storm damage reduction project built by the Corps of Engineers here at Coney Island. However, with the previous work performed, there were still critical vulnerabilities that resulted in severe damage to the Seagate community and other parts of Coney Island. After we're done with the remarks, we'll actually have a chance to walk out on the project so you can see what the difference is as this project was constructed. This project was previously authorized but still unconstructed at that point, and since then, through the hard work of the congressional delegates here today, Public Law 113-2, the Sandy Recovery Act, was passed, providing the authority and funding to complete this risk mitigation project here at Coney Island and other locations across the region that were so heavily damaged and impacted. This Coney Island project is designed to improve the functioning of the existing coastal storm risk management project, increasing its effectiveness in the face of storms like Sandy, but also the more common nor'easters. The result will be a better protected and more resilient community. Work began in December 2014, and less than 2 years later, this project is complete. It was a large project in scope and scale. 4 T-groin structures and a spur off the West 37th Street groin right behind us were built using roughly 100,000 tons of stone. Additionally, we reinforced the Norton Point Dike and the West 37th Street groins. These elements are the key to stabilizing the sand and reducing the rate of normal and storm erosion, but it directly reduces the wave impacts on Seagate in the event of a storm. We also placed roughly 70,000 cubic yards of sand within the project area, which was primarily dredged from the Gravesend Bay side of Seagate. When you go out there and you get a chance to look right after this, you'll see where the water used to come up right against the bulkheads on high tide. And now you'll see a large beach and the sand that's in place there to protect that community. Although this is not the largest of the Sandy recovery projects, the cost was $25 million, all of which was federally funded. In closing, I'd like to thank once again our partners and elected officials for the support that was necessary to complete this important project. The people of Coney Island are better protected and resilient due to our collective efforts. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and specifically the New York District, look forward to our continued service to our great nation, this region, and especially New York City. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who has been such a staunch advocate for the residents of the affected communities, Senator Schumer. Sir.
Well, thank you, Colonel David Caldwell. Before I begin with the substance of my remarks, I just want to mention how we are all in mourning for the horrible, horrible, horrible shooting in Orlando. This cannot go on. It's just awful. We have to do everything we can to protect people. The evil terrorism that does this, and with their bigotry against LGBT people and everybody and so many others, is just despicable. And we have to join together as a nation and do everything we can to stop it. And our thoughts go to those families, friends who are in mourning. This is the worst terrorist incident in the United States since the Twin Towers were taken down 15 years ago. And we just have to redouble our efforts. But we do know that the terrorists want us to stop. And just as after 9/11 we vowed to move forward, and I continue to do events and things that normally a senator does after 9/11, we're doing the same today. This is the best refutation of the terrorists, that we're doing what America always does: build, get stronger, get better together. And so I'm proud to be here today. I want to thank Colonel Caldwell. He does a great job here in New York. And his superior, I want to tell his superior, General Graham, General, we love the Army Corps. You're doing a great job here in Coney Island, and a great job from one end of the grandest sandbar in the world, from Coney Island all the way to Montauk. I've been a strong supporter of the Army Corps and will continue to be, and they do a great job throughout our state, in Rochester and Buffalo and so many other regions as well. I also want to give a special shout out to my friend Congressman Nadler, who has been just an indefatigable voice and arm to help get these beaches here in Coney Island and in his part of Brooklyn restored. These beaches are beautiful. They're part of my childhood, and I'd come here all the time. Once we had a friend who lived in Seagate, and we could go in there and park our car in the driveway. That was a big deal. But usually we'd come to Coney Island, sometimes Reese Park on a Sunday, and I can still taste the sand in the tuna fish sandwiches my mother made. But it was just beautiful memories. So it's great to be here. I also want to thank Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. He shares the Brooklyn beachfront with Congressman Nadler and has been a wonderful partner as well in this endeavor. We have our Councilman, Mark Treyger. I want to thank Mark for the good work. He's really a feisty fighter for the Southern Shore. I want to thank Daniel Zarrilli from the Mayor's Office, Steve Wynn of the Seagate Association, and Steve Zahn of the State DEC. Now, the completion of the Coney Island Coastal Protection Project's great news, and it's going to provide the desperately needed security against future storms and floods for the people of Coney Island and Seagate. When we passed the Sandy bill, resiliency was a key. We didn't just want to rebuild to what it was before. We wanted to make it better, so when, God forbid, another Sandy came, we'd be stronger and better and wouldn't go through what we went through after 9/11. And the Army Corps has been very well a great partner in that, and so it's so great to be here. The project's going to replenish and repair the treasured beachfront from Brighton Beach to Seagate for years and years and years to come. And let me just give you some background. For some time, Coney Island's beaches were in desperate need of protection and aid. The beaches began eroding in 1992 with the nor'easter. I was congressman. I remember coming down here. I remember Surf Avenue being totally flooded. And we had such problems even then. It was cold and it was wet. So in 1995, the Army Corps completed the initial construction of the Coney Island Shoreline Project. It was called the Coney Island Reach. 2.4 million cubic yards of sand were placed from West 37th Street to Brighton Beach, and there was a 500-foot extension of the West 37th Street terminal groin. But the sand began eroding westward, that's how it is, around towards Gravesend Bay and the Coney Island Creek even before Sandy, leaving Coney Island vulnerable. So the Army identified the Seagate T-groin project as the way to stop the erosion, maintaining the protection beach profile of Coney Island from Seagate to Brighton Beach. Now Sandy, of course, exacerbated the damage, increased the critical need for repair and proactive infrastructure. We all remember that the receding of Coney Island's beaches after Sandy. Seagate suffered particularly extensive damage during the storm, including the inundation of the entire inland area to about 4 or 5 feet above the ground. Storm waves varioused all kinds of waterfront structures, many residential homes, extensive flooding through Gravesend Bay and Coney Island Creek. So, we know that our beaches, our dunes, are our first line of protection against these storms, making our shoreline stronger and more resilient. And that's what we needed to do here at Coney Island. So, Jerry, Hakeem, myself, Senator Gillibrand, we all worked long and hard to secure the federal funding for this effort. After a tough fight, I'm proud to say we were able to secure full federal funding, $25 million, for these beach protections along the waterfront between West 37th Street, and Brighton Beach. Congressman Nadler led the charge in the House. Congressman Jeffries helped bring it across the finish line. And as a result, Coney Island's waterfront neighborhoods and beaches are more resilient and secure. It's a worthy effort. I'm proud to have been a part of it, and we're going to keep an eye on these beaches and bring back whatever is needed in the future, because this is God's gift to us here in Brooklyn. One of the most beautiful beachfronts, not just in New York, but in our country. With that, I guess I'm going to turn it back over to the Colonel. Colonel, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Next, I'd like to invite up Representative Nadler. He currently represents New York's 10th Congressional District. However, prior to the congressional district boundaries being redrawn, he represented this community. He's never stopped looking out for its well-being. Every time we do congressional visits, he always asks. So, Congressman.
Thank you, Colonel. I'm very pleased to be here with my colleagues in government, Senator Schumer, Congressman Jeffries, Councilman Treyger, General Graham, Colonel Caldwell, Acting DEC Regional Director Steve Zahn, and Director Zarrilli of the Mayor's Office of Recovery and Resiliency. My first contact with Coney Island and the Seagate community occurred very shortly after I won the 1992 election for Congress. And my district, I had represented a district on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, that suddenly I'm now representing Manhattan and Brooklyn, including Coney Island. Later in the month, in November of 1992, or December, I was attending an orientation program for new members of Congress at Harvard in Cambridge, when I got an urgent call from a staff member who said, "Congressman, I think you better come home right away. Your district is being washed out to sea." I left Harvard in a hurry and returned to New York to witness firsthand the severe damage caused here by the nor'easter of 1992, which was the worst storm in a long time. Since that fateful day, when I saw Seagate's vulnerability to storms, and that day the bay and the ocean met, it was all completely inundated. And since that day, when I saw Seagate's vulnerability, I've always been a strong advocate of ensuring that the homes and community in Seagate and in Coney Island be protected. In 1994, I worked to bring about the sand replenishment of the beaches and the construction of the West 37th Street groin. In 2000, I worked out a plan with the Army Corps of Engineers to replenish sand on a short-term basis, and we got instructions in the bill in Congress to the Army Corps to study alternatives for a long-term solution to the erosion of the land, of sand, I should say, in Seagate. In 2002, I secured $450,000 for the Army Corps in the FY04 Omnibus Appropriations Bill for the construction of T-groins, rock jetties along the beaches. Then in 2012, Superstorm Sandy hit Coney Island and Seagate, and devastated the community and the entire metropolitan area. Also in 2012, the Federal District Court redistricted my district out of Coney Island. But I never forgot my commitment to this community and to complete the project. And I'm proud to say that working with Senator Schumer, with my colleague and my successor in this area, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, and with the Army Corps of Engineers, we have finally completed the Coney Island Shore Protection Project. These T-groins, as they are commonly called, or rock jetties, are the long-term permanent solution that some of us advocated for many years to protect the shoreline of Seagate and Coney Island and prevent the further erosion of the ocean beaches and the buildup of sand on the Gravesend Bay side. This is truly a great day, and I'm proud to be a part of it. I remember being here, it was about 18 months ago, at what I call the frozen press conferences. Press conference right out here was about 5 degrees, and some of us were silly enough to not be wearing coats for the photos when we initiated the final work, which has now been completed. And I will conclude by saying that over 20 years ago, promises were made. Today, we can say those promises were kept, and I just leave it to the Army Corps and to the people who will continue to represent this area to make sure in the future that what we complete today, the infrastructure that is built and now built and is here, is maintained properly, so we won't have any more calls to future congressmen to come home. Your district is washing out to sea. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite up Representative Jeffries, the Congressman representing New York's 8th Congressional District. He's also continued to push for very timely improved protection and resiliency measures for this process, through this process, and for this particular project. Congressman.
Well, thank you, Colonel Caldwell, and to General Graham, to Congressman Jerrold Nadler, of course, Senator Schumer, Councilman Treyger, and all of my colleagues in government at the city, state, and federal level. It's an honor and a privilege to be here on today for this tremendous ceremony in recognition of the completion of this magnificent and vital project. You know, Congressman Nadler mentioned that as he was on his way into the House of Representatives in 1992, he received a call that the nor'easter had struck and parts of his district were washing away. 20 years after that, in October of 2012, I was on my way in to the House of Representatives, and Superstorm Sandy struck this very community again, doing tremendous damage along the shore in Coney Island and Seagate and other parts of the district. I guess the lesson is that watch out for a storm the next time you send a new member of Congress to the House of Representatives. Hopefully that means I'll be around for a while. But when Superstorm Sandy struck the communities of Seagate and Coney Island, we were knocked down to the ground. But we recognized that a knockdown was very different than a knockout. And we were committed with the leadership of Jerrold Nadler and Senator Schumer and other members of the congressional delegation to make sure that we got ourselves up off the ground, that we strengthened our resiliency, and that we made things better for everyone. And today, with the completion of this T-groin and beach replenishment project, we've taken a substantial step in that direction. And I'm thankful for the leadership of the Army Corps of Engineers who've worked with us hand in hand, going all the way back to November of 1992, when Jerrold Nadler received that call, all the way through this present day. Thankful for the leadership of our state and federal and city representatives, certainly Mark Treyger, who's done a tremendous job in representing this community. It's often been said that Coney Island has the world's greatest playground. And that's true. But we also have here in Coney Island and in Seagate some of the world's greatest people. And when Superstorm Sandy struck, those people needed the intervention of the federal government. And they received the intervention of the federal government. And we will continue to be with these communities until we do everything possible to prevent the type of devastation that occurred in 1992 and in 2012 from ever happening again.
You know, we can't build such projects as these without the assistance of others. I'd like to thank our fellow agencies, our Higher Headquarters North Atlantic Division, commanded by Brigadier General Graham, who is here today, our headquarters, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the contractor for this project, H&L Construction, as well as the Community Board and the U.S. Attorney's Office. Also like to thank the employees of the New York District for a job well done, whether it was public outreach or engineering and design or construction oversight. We're a district that gets things done thanks to your efforts. Specifically, Dan Fault, the project manager, Andrew Masella, the project engineer, and Ellen Simon from our Office of Counsel. They were all instrumental in executing this project. All those I mentioned, and probably more, consistently work with each other to synchronize efforts so projects are built and people are cared for better. Likewise, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, as a non-federal sponsor, has been instrumental in helping with this project moving along forward to completion. Today we have with us Steve Zahn, the acting Region 2 Director. Steve.
Thank you very much, Colonel. It's a pleasure to be here today with you, with General Graham, Senator Schumer, Congressman Nadler, excuse me, Congressman Jeffries, Dan Zarrilli, and Councilman Treyger. On behalf of Governor Cuomo and Acting Commissioner Basil Sagos, I just want to say how pleased I am to be here today to mark the conclusion of this project that will bring such much needed storm risk reduction to the community. Many in the Army Corps, at DEC, and in New York City government worked tirelessly with the community and with our elected officials, putting in tremendous time and effort to plan, design, and ultimately construct this project. It's an important accomplishment, but we all realize that the work does not and cannot stop here. Superstorm Sandy being the wake-up call that it was, and now in the face of climate change and sea level rise, we all need to be much more vigilant in finding ways to reduce our vulnerability and enhancing our ability to recover in the wake of future events. And New York State is prepared to do so in both traditional and more progressive ways. We'll continue to work with the Army Corps and local partners to maintain our current levels of storm protection and to bring to completion the multiple coastal projects that are currently in development for communities from Montauk to Staten Island. And as an outgrowth of the North Atlantic Coast Comprehensive Study, we look forward to working with the Army Corps and our partners in New Jersey in conducting a feasibility study in the Hudson Raritan Estuary and its tributaries to identify at-risk locations and to develop potential solutions for additional storm risk reduction. On the more progressive front, with Governor Cuomo recently signing into law the Community Risk and Resiliency Act, New York State is working to layer climate change considerations into a wide range of programs that touch on things such as permitting, facility siting, open space acquisition, funding programs, and more. We're also developing tools to help municipalities add climate change considerations into local planning so that they can make smart planning even smarter. And with the goal, obviously, of reducing risk in general, and for identifying that when it's prudent to rebuild, that we rebuild back better. We all have a lot of important work to do with coastal protection. But while we're hard at work on these other fronts, we should always take a little time, as we're doing here today, to make note of our accomplishments along the way. So I do want to just, again, congratulate everybody who had a hand in bringing this project to fruition. Thank you.
New York City has consistently leveraged their resources to help improve the city. And we also had a key local sponsor who has been very good to work with, New York City Parks. I'd also like to thank them for helping us set up for this event today. Today we have with us here to represent, we have two different people to represent the city. The first of which I'll ask to come forward is Dan Zarrilli, the Senior Director of Climate Policy and Programs and Chief Resiliency Officer in the Mayor's Office. Dan.
Thank you, Colonel. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and on behalf of Mayor Bill de Blasio, I'm proud to be here on the beach today. It's a beautiful day, and to mark the completion of such an important project. I want to recognize for sure the leadership of Senator Schumer, Congressmen Nadler and Jeffries. Thank you for your help in getting us to this day. Our partners in the Army Corps, certainly Colonel Caldwell, General Graham, and all of our partners at the federal and state level, in particular Steve Zahn, DEC, and Mark Treyger, Councilman for the local district here. It's a real pleasure to be sharing the stage with you today. I also want to make a particular note of the city staff that are here today, that it was important to have them here to mark their contributions to the project. Certainly Curtis Cravens, our Coastal Resiliency Director in the Mayor's Office, Michael Shake, Joe Musso for his work with the Seagate community in particular, Sam Hirsch, and certainly the Parks Department for all their leadership, and Marty, I believe I saw you somewhere. Thank you for your help. Certainly we saw the devastation of Hurricane Sandy and what it did here in southern Brooklyn. And as we were really looking around for what we were going to do and how we were going to respond to that, we recognized that there was no comprehensive coastal protection plan for the entire city. The city began looking for existing partnerships, existing projects to leverage toward that goal. And certainly our work with the state, our work with the federal government, with the Army Corps, provided several great examples. And we're here today to mark the completion of one here in Seagate. You're also looking at behind you at the completion of the beach that was renourished after Hurricane Sandy. There's been other work that's happened across the city. But we also needed to leverage those partnerships to do more. And that's what we're continuing to work with our partners on as we move forward. And that's also part of the city's program to also look at what it can do itself. And we've been investing heavily in our coastal protection in other parts of the city as well. And we look forward to working with the Army Corps as we continue to expand our study, the harbor and TRIB study in particular. But today really marks a critical milestone in the completion of one of the projects in the city's plan with many of its partners. And this project is an incredibly important project, $25 million invested here in Seagate to help protect the residents here, to make the neighborhood safer, stronger, provides benefit to Coney Island as well. Overall, part of the city's program, $20 billion are being invested across the entire city. This is one piece of that. Over $2 billion being invested just here in Coney Island alone, in the new hospital, in our NYCHA complexes, hundreds of millions of dollars being invested to make residents safer and stronger, and this is one piece of that. We're going to continue to do that as we think and work with our partners at the federal and state level to make a stronger, more resilient New York. So thank you again. It's a pleasure to be here, and we look forward to many, many ribbon cuttings to come in the future. Thank you.
Okay, and finally we have the New York City Councilman, Mr. Mark Treyger. He's here with us today, also been a very staunch advocate and key as far as helping move this forward, especially with community outreach. Mark.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you to the General, DEC, my colleagues in government, Congressman Jeffries, Nadler, Senator Schumer, and thank you, Dan Zarrilli. So today, as we've heard, yes, this is a very important day and a very important step forward towards protecting our southern Brooklyn coastline. This is an important project that deals with a very big issue we deal with here on this coastline, erosion. And I just want to say that we would not have gotten to this point without the leadership and really the ownership of this issue, without both Senator Schumer, Congressman Nadler, and Congressman Jeffries. Let's give them, please, another round of applause for coming through for Southern Brooklyn. But I want to point something out. Erosion certainly is a major issue here. But to put things into context, we're about 13, 14 feet above sea level, according to the Parks Department. And that ocean still came up over that beach and boardwalk. And we are at a very strategic point here, whereby at the border, this is Coney Island Seagate. Well, this was a major flood entry point during Superstorm Sandy. So any protection that we provide to this particular location and throughout the Seagate community actually is a peninsula-wide strategy in trying to mitigate the flooding throughout the entire peninsula. Because the waters came in from Gravesend Bay, from Coney Island Creek, and from the ocean all at once. So we have to look at a plan that is peninsula-wide, that is regional. We need to make sure that the protection provided here reaches across and protects the residents throughout Seagate, the west end of Coney Island, into Brighton Beach and beyond. And that is why we have continuously advocated for the type of cooperation that was needed to make this project successful. We will need, once again, to make sure that we have a system-wide regional plan that protects the entire southern Brooklyn coastline. Because it may not just be a coastal storm that we have to protect against. It could be a financial storm in the form of flood insurance rates that will be changed once maps are finalized soon. So I want to say, I've said it before, I'll say it again, Sandy was an unprecedented storm that required federal, state, and city cooperation at all levels. And the plan to protect lives, to protect affordability, and to make sure that our residents live in a safe, enjoyable place, that's going to require that continued, that stubborn persistence of federal, state, and city cooperation. And I vow to do my part to make that happen. Thank you all.
Well, thanks to all of you who provided remarks today and those of you in attendance. It's always a great day when we see a project completed, and ultimately when that project improves the well-being of those we work for, the American people, those we care for deeply about protecting this community and others. Now, I'd like to invite all those who are interested. We're going to walk down the ramp and around and actually go out on the project site. You can actually see it firsthand. And thank you again for coming. Appreciate your attendance.